Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're here for November 7th Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Thanks for everybody that can be in attendance. I don't believe we have a quorum currently, but we're still going to do a call to order right now. Yes, sir. Okay, so can I ask Howard Overhead to initiate a call to order?
Would you like a roll call? Okay.
Sorry, wrong verbiage.
No problem. Jeff Sims,
Here.
Mike Williams,
Here.
Brian McCarthy, Troy Tinch, Jonathan Scott,
Here.
Chris Jadick, Michael English,
remotely here.
Robert Frey, Anna Quinones. I believe I saw Anna online. Yep.
Hi, yeah, I'm online. Sorry.
Clay Hollis. I believe he was excused. Gina Evans. Leland Dykes. Marcelo Tavernari. Christianitis.
Here.
Julie Ham. Mark Hudson. Laura Bauk. Danny Jorgensen. Jay Collins.
Present.
Melissa Leinhart.
Here.
Nicole Sutton. Shadalyn Apollon. Sarah Caper.
Here.
And at this time, we do not have an in-person quorum. If that does occur, let me know so I can mark the attendance and call for the remote consent participation.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So with that, won't have that. So do we have any public comments? Not seeing a response from anyone in the room. Is there anyone online that wishes to speak?
Welcome to the webinar. You can enter an S and attendee in listen only mode.
There we are. So no one online?
No hands raised.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Very good. So I guess we will hold off on the approval of minutes. Well, let me ask if anybody had any comments on the minutes at this time. We won't be able to approve them, I don't think. But if there's any changes that anybody needed to suggest, please say so now. Okay, we can't approve it. Okay. So if we get a quorum later, we will backtrack to that. So are we doing the action item or we will have it? Is Roger aware? But we can tell them. So we're going to move on. We're going to skip the action item without a quorum. So Roger, if you're online, if you can kind of stay in a holding pattern temporarily, and if we get late providing quorum, we're going to circle back to your amendment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Okay, I think we're up here prepping for the first status report, which is the Fowler Avenue studies. You have the OT, PD&E, and the Plain Visions plan. And bear with us online. I think we are just kind of getting difficulties to address.
Yeah, and while they bring that up, I can set the stage. This is Jay Collins with Planning Commission staff. So basically, this is to provide a status update to 3 different projects that are occurring along the Fowler Avenue corridor. One of them being obviously from DOT with its PD&E study, with Park with their arterial BRT study, and then finally with Planning Commission, Planned Hillsborough, the TPO, the City of Tampa, and unincorporated Hillsborough County doing a Fowler Avenue vision study along the corridor to look at the land uses. So as these new facilities are built along Fowler Avenue, we have the proper land use in place to support those facilities and those types of investments. Usually I'm long-winded, perhaps I should just keep going with that, right?
No, that's a great intro, and we've had some, I know over the years, some, updates on various projects going on Fowler Avenue. It's certainly a very, very busy portion, and there's a lot of different types of operations there between the university and the businesses and so forth. So it's without a doubt an important area to focus on. I had a question for later, maybe you can answer it now, Jay, I saw where it's extending all the way to 56th Street. So is the city of Temple Terrace involved in some of these studies too?
So for DOT's portion, the PD&E, and Ms. Russo can speak to it, obviously goes to 56.
Mhm.
The study for Planned Hillsborough goes to 52nd because we are actually signed on with unincorporated Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa to do the study.
Okay.
It's looking at those land uses within those two jurisdictions.
Did it stop
It's
at
not to say that there can't be an extension of that study during the phase 2, but for phase 1, it's just looking at those two jurisdictions.
I did it stop at 52nd because that's the city limit?
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Please introduce yourself when you start. Thanks.
Sure. Can everyone hear me online? I'm using a different screen than we usually use.
Can everyone online here?
If you can speak up a little bit, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amber Russo. I'm the FDOT project manager for this PD&E study along Fowler Avenue. It is work program item segment number 448505-1. I'm here to present the project's kickoff information, but also, like Jay said, you'll be given status updates on two closely related studies following my presentation. This study begins in Tampa at North Florida Avenue and ends in the city of Temple Terrace, just west of North 56th Street, which is a distance of approximately 4 miles. The purpose of the PD&E study is to address safety, reduce traffic congestion, and improve multimodal accommodations. Improvements being studied include a transit corridor from Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. These alternatives include business access and transit lanes or MAT lanes, a frontage road system, and a median guideway. Also, innovative intersections are being studied for the segment from Bruce B. Downs Boulevard to Bull Run Drive. From this slide, you can see there is a lot going on in the 4-mile project corridor. Several studies are being conducted on and adjacent to Fowler Avenue in addition to this study. The two project teams you'll be hearing from after me are HART's Arterial Bus Rapid Transit or BRT study, which is shown along Nebraska Avenue, Fowler Avenue, and Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. You'll also hear from the Planning Commission's Fowler Avenue Vision Plan, which encompasses a large portion of this map. All of these studies will provide the framework for improvements along Fowler Avenue. With the redevelopment of the University Mall area and the USF football stadium, we can all agree that Fowler Avenue is in need of improvements to address safety for all of its users. This slide shows all crashes that have occurred in the project corridor for the 5-year period from 2015 to 2019. As the graphic reveals, there were over 3,300 crashes, with 75% of those occurring at 10 specific intersections. 53 of the crashes were considered severe, resulting in 46 incapacitating injuries and 9 fatalities. Please note all 9 fatalities included a pedestrian or bicyclist, which is shown on the next slide. So like I said, all of these crashes involved a pedestrian or bicyclist. In total, there were 120 crashes, resulting in 9 fatalities and 17 incapacitating injuries. These crashes represent 51% of all severe crashes in the corridor. Approximately 80 of the total 120 crashes, or 73%, occurred between Nebraska Avenue and Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, which is where we're proposing the transit corridor. I also want to mention the segment of Fowler from Nebraska Avenue to North 52nd Street is listed on the City of Tampa's high injury network. Here we have our first Existing typical section, this runs from Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Today Fowler is an 8-lane divided roadway with numerous median left turn lanes. We have 7-foot bike lanes that are located adjacent to the travel lanes and sidewalks on both sides of Fowler. And the existing right-of-way width totals to 185 feet. Second typical is in the eastern segment of the project from Bruce B. Downs Boulevard to west of North 56th Street. This is a 6-lane divided roadway where the 7-foot bike lanes and 5-foot sidewalks continue, and the existing right-of-way width totals to 230 feet. Now let's look at the 3 alternatives for the transit corridor from Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Alternative 1 includes repurposing the existing outside lanes as bat lanes for business access and transit, meaning they would be marked for bus use and for vehicles making a right turn into a business or a side street. This alternative also includes 12-foot shared use paths along both sides of Fowler, and based on preliminary analysis, minimal right-of-way acquisition may be required. The second alternative is the frontage road concept. The frontage lanes would be located parallel to and separate from the main line Fowler Avenue. They would be utilized by non-transit vehicles and would provide access to local businesses. Vehicles on the main line can access the frontage lanes via slip ramps and vice versa. Transit vehicles would utilize the outside bat lanes on the main line. Shared use paths or wider sidewalks would be located adjacent to the frontage lanes, and minimal right-of-way acquisition may be required for this one as well. Our third and final alternative includes a median guideway for transit vehicles only. Stops would be located near intersections and crosswalks to allow for safer pedestrian access. Non-transit vehicles would be permitted to make turns at designated intersections and locations. This concept also includes the shared use paths on both sides, and based on preliminary analysis, minimal right-of-way acquisition may be required. As previously mentioned, the design of Fowler Avenue has user safety first and foremost. Narrower travel lanes and other proven traffic calming strategies are being considered. To accommodate these measures, the speed limit on Fowler Avenue may be reduced. Also, from Bruce B. Downs Boulevard to Bull Run Drive, innovative intersections will be studied. Additionally, pedestrian and bicycle facilities will be enhanced throughout the corridor. Innovative intersections are intended for major streets with higher volumes of traffic, just like Fowler Avenue. Innovative intersections modify vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle movements at conventional intersections to reduce delay, increase efficiency, and provide safer travel for all road users. The FDOT manual on intersection control evaluation will be utilized to determine the best possible intersection design. These include arc cuts, displaced left turns, through cuts, and single loops. Public engagement is underway and will continue throughout the duration of the study. These study kickoff presentations will be given at the remaining TPO committee meetings and then to your board. The project kickoff newsletters in your packets were mailed to properties along the corridor and sent to stakeholders. Another newsletter will be sent to announce a future public meeting not yet scheduled. The project website is active and will be updated continually through the study. Small group meetings will be held with interested community groups within and adjacent to the study area. Also, an alternatives public workshop will be held once the alternatives are evaluated. And also a public hearing may be held if necessary based on the preferred alternative. Here's a look at our schedule. And as it shows, public involvement will occur throughout the study. Data collection is underway with alternatives development and evaluation to follow. The alternatives public workshop I mentioned before is anticipated for the second quarter of 2023. And then if necessary, a public hearing would be towards the end of next year, 2023. For more information on the project, I put the study website on the slide, as well as my information, so feel free to contact me. And if the committee is ready, I will turn it over to Jesus for a heart study.
Okay.
It's up to you.
I think maybe if you could hold for a second, so if we have any questions, because you're going to have a different presentation, right? Like, compared to this one. So I think if we have any pointed questions about anything we've seen here, it might be best to handle those now. So does the committee have any questions or comments on what was presented thus far? I have a couple. I think the project certainly, like I mentioned earlier to Jay, has a lot of merit. I did have one question on your alternative 3. Can you bring that slide up where it shows a picture of alternative 3 with the center of transit? So that's suggesting that, are those stops in the middle? I guess my question would be, do you have any idea about, how you would be moving, if there's supposed to be stops there, the pedestrians across the intersection, across the roads?
Yeah, so the stations or stops would be located preferably near intersections where there are crosswalks or at mid-block crossings. So it would be as safe as possible to get the pedestrians from the sidewalk on the main line to the median stop.
Okay. All right. I mean, without knowing a whole lot about it, I would certainly, have hesitations on that. Just the idea of introducing more people crossing very busy roadways would be a very large concern, if they weren't. So that was just my opinion that I think we're bringing to it, but I was curious about that. The other thing, and this is just more of a comment, if you can bring back the slides that show the crashes on the intersections. Again, I don't regularly work with traffic. That's not what I do. So maybe this is very common for you all. But what jumped out at me is the number of crashes at 15th and Fowler for its size. I think that's a 2-lane road that may expand to 4 at the intersection. But this one and the following one with the the fatalities or the pedestrian, it seems excessively high compared to all the other ones. So I guess one thing I'm just pointing it out for whatever everybody's benefit that they wanted to hear about it. But I guess when you talk about innovative intersections and so forth, I would, minimally like to think that this was a really focused intersection based on the data. I'm sure it would have been, but I think I'm just kind of highlighting it. Certainly, there's other ones of concern too. I mean, I'm not surprised Brisby Downs and Fowler is a large peak, but 15th, I just wouldn't have thought that. I think it's the amount of pedestrians that utilize that area is probably the reason. But so anyway, just bringing that up. If anybody had comments, feel free. But that was it for me.
One follow-up to the issue on 15th. That was in our original high entry network, Vision Zero. It has a heart route on it that is one of the, I believe, the highest ADA used heart routes in the county. And I know the county has also just done some improvements on 15th.
Okay, well, very good. I'm glad to hear that's being addressed. And that's part of what we're charged with here as a committee is to identify things and ask questions. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm very glad to hear that they're taking some measures. But again, as you look at future studies, I think that should be a focus area among all. So thank you. I don't feel like we have any other comments, so I think we could. Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah.
Just looking more closely at the typicals, the one thing that stood out to me in alternative 2, and maybe you'll be addressing this, is you only have an 8-foot path. And that seems kind of narrow, as that's going to be replacing the bike lane and the sidewalk. Just something to keep in mind with that one.
Yes, I understand. These typical sections are very preliminary. We just executed the contract really with the consultant. So we're going to be refining these. And the reason why there's 8-foot paths on our side right now is we were trying to see what we could do within the existing right of way. We're going to be working on that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amber. I think we'll move on to the next portion of the.
Hand it over to Jesus.
Good afternoon, committee members and everybody else. My name is Jesus Barraza Garcia. I'm part of the planning staff with HART, and I'm here to give you an update on the arterial BRT study. So first, how did we get here and what has happened to date? The study started in 2019-2018 timeframe. It started as a phase 1, and it resulted in a recommended alignment that was approved by the board in late 2020. In parallel, there's been the TOD pilot project going on, which is intended to recommend transit-oriented development strategies along the BRT corridor. That study is slated to wrap up sometime before the end of this year. After coming up with the recommended alternative, there was concerns about the high cost and the uncertainty of the transportation surtax. So phase 2A came to happen. So came up with a lower cost alternative, which was approved by the board earlier this year and was moved on to design. So I'm gonna talk a bit more about lower cost and recommended alternatives in a little bit. They mostly relate to how the bus interacts with traffic, but the alignment itself hasn't changed between one alternative and the other. So this is an overview of the corridor. It's the Florida-Nebraska Fowler corridor connecting downtown Tampa with the university area. The HART's 3 busiest routes connect these 2 points, and 2 of those routes are the Florida and the Nebraska routes. So this is a prime corridor for BRT service. It would also connect not just downtown and USF, but also Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights, which are important neighborhoods, lots of residents and jobs along there. The recommended alignment from phase 1 is the Limeville Avenue crossover to get from Florida to Nebraska up to Fowler. If you get over too soon, you will be replicating the Nebraska route, which is already a Metro Rapid, which is like has some BRT-like enhancements. So we don't want to be duplicative of that. And also that way we serve most of the densest parts of Florida Avenue and avoid the car dealerships north of Limeville. Last I checked, cars don't take transit. So. What does this look like for Fowler? So that's a close-up of Fowler. Station areas are subject to further studies, but preliminary stations would be at 15th Street, 22nd Street, and Frisbee Downs. And there's also a station at Nebraska and Fowler, but that will more than likely be on Nebraska, south of Fowler. Why is important to introduce service on Fowler is to serve these communities with high need. There is the people without a car. There are high concentrations of people without a car in this area, high concentrations of lower income people, and it also enables connections to important job centers like downtown, Seminole Heights, and Tampa Heights. And on the flip side, residents from those 3 areas get access to one of the biggest employers in the region, which is USF and its surroundings. There's also redevelopment going on this portion of Fowler, the most notorious of which is University Mall. I understand there are others going on, but it's still in the works. At the street level, which is where you get to see the difference between the preferred or recommended alternative and the lower cost one. First, I will caveat this by saying that this is the outcome of the BRT study. FDOT's PD&E will look further into this and refine the details of these alternatives and the other ones that Nam represented. So you can see that preferred is the median running bus-only lanes, and the lower cost one is curbside running business access and transit lanes. So buses and cars would mix there. There is about a $40 million gap in terms of capital cost. Operating cost is pretty similar, slightly higher on the lower cost alternative because it takes longer since it has less preferential treatment, the bus. takes longer, so the longer the bus is running, the more labor, the more fuel you have to pay. So what's next for the arterial BRT study? We must complete the design, and then after that's done, we would move on to permitting, public engagement, and seeking funding matches from federal, state, and regional sources. And then construction would happen. There's no defined implementation timeframe because funding has not been identified for the entirety of the corridor. There are some pieces here and there. There's the PD&E going on Fowler. There's another study going on in the southern part of the corridor, the Tampa Heights area. But there's no funding to build the whole thing and to operate it at a higher frequency than today. So that's it for me. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Jesus. There's my contact info. Well, I'm supposed to pass it on to Jay, but I think we'll do questions first.
Yeah, I think maybe, again, probably easier if we address questions while it's fresh in our minds here. So thank you for the presentation. Do we have any comments or questions from the committee? Mike?
The funding you mentioned, is that dependent on the referendum or is that independent funding?
Yes, it depends on the referendum.
I guess, is there a backup plan if it, for whatever reason, is not approved or passed? Or just we won't be able to do the project right now?
Well, it wouldn't have as much preferential treatment as it would ideally have. We already have good service on Florida and Nebraska, but this would speed it up and make it more attractive for users.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jay, take it away.
Okay, all right, Jay, you're back in cleanup.
So let's see if I can do this or if I hit one button, it all goes downhill. So again, Jay Cox with Planning Commission staff, the Fowler Avenue Vision Study, myself and Alvaro Gabalden, along with Elizabeth Watkins, we are the three in-house folks who are doing this. There's also a variety of folks from the county that are working with us in the city of Tampa, and there is a consultant on board, Kimberly Horn, to do this. So just a little bit about Fowler Avenue. You know, Sheriff said it earlier, there's a lot of studies that have gone on in this area. It's a very dynamic area. It's a confluence of a lot of things that is going on. It's a confluence by land uses in that the city of Tampa has the majority of the frontage, but just to the north, you're going to find unincorporated Hillsborough County. To that effect, if I'm in the mall, University Mall, I'm in unincorporated county. But if I go to those restaurants in front of the mall, I'm in the city of Tampa. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of those land uses and how you actually get things done along Fowler Avenue. And at times, we have been told by private capital is a disincentive to do redevelopment along that because basically there are too many cooks in the kitchen. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to have a conversation with all parties involved. We want to have a conversation with the folks here in this building, the folks over on Jackson at the city of Tampa, the folks who just had a conversation with us today about infrastructure, and last but certainly not least, the people that live and work along Fowler Avenue for what they see Fowler becoming in the future and how we can actually basically get through that hurdle of that land use. So again, the synergy we'd like to talk about, because that's part of why we think this is a good time and a good opportunity to do this now, because of a large capital investment for transit and to redesign Fowler Avenue. So again, what is the purpose of the study? To develop a vision plan for Fowler Avenue corridor that enables equitable redevelopment. We'll talk a little bit about that. Equity is not just a catchphrase in this. It's something that has to be driven home in what we do here. But what is a vision plan? If we go around the room right now and we have a conversation and go, what is the vision for your family? Well, everybody's going to come at it a little bit differently, but you're all going to have some very similar ideas of what you want. So that's the same thing about having a vision plan for a community. It's asking them for what they see for their community and how their families can be successful in that community, whether it's their economics, their education, allowing children access to play, or allowing the elderly and the disabled access to goods and services that they may not see today. And achieve an integrated land use and transportation vision. Well, the land use we talked a little bit about, and they just set it up with the transportation. I certainly don't need to make a mention on that. But the land use, again, part of what we're looking for here as an actual deliverable on the scope for this are some policies that would be adopted into both of the comprehensive plans for the city of Tampa and unincorporated Hillsborough County that deal with just how we tackle those two different land uses and development patterns in the county and the city along Fowler Avenue. And then develop a clear and consistent redevelopment strategy. So basically, we'll talk about them, but my 3 deliverables are: 1, that bread and butter, what is the existing conditions? What are the conditions on the road today, land use wise? 2, what is my vision plan? What do we all see is happening in this area policy wise in the future? How can we articulate that in vision? And then 3, what are my redevelopment strategies to actually see those visions become a reality in the future? So this is an aerial of the study area. I don't have a land use map in this presentation. So I don't have one because I'm hoping that everybody that's here has gone down Fowler Avenue so many times that you could give this presentation to tell me what the kinds of uses are on Fowler Avenue. You know that there's a tremendous amount of commercial activity. You know that just south of the University of South Florida, you've got industrial. You know that along 30th Street, north of Fowler, besides the university, you have major medical complexes. And you know that throughout this area, you have a variety of residential neighborhoods. There's also a lot of public investment that is yet to be tapped, primarily the Mosey complex that is on the south side of Fowler as one approaches the end of the study area going east. Is the University of South Florida in the study? Of course it is. Why would it not be? I just don't have it lit up here on this map as a boundary because that boundary helps me with actually some of the statistics. If I put the university in there, it's going to move the needle one way or the other about how much property is affected, what is the redevelopment potential here, how much money do folks make here, what is my educational attainment, all sorts of different things would be skewed if I put the university in. Are the recommendations something for the university to consider? Most definitely, because they'll be adopted within the comprehensive plan and they are within the city of Tampa. So a little bit about those demographics. Just over 15,000 people, 6,000 households, 25% don't have a vehicle. Again, there's a lot of employment here, but there's a lot of people without vehicles. You know, that's what they always talk to me as a land use planner. One of the things that we always go after to actually improve transit along anything is, can we demonstrate that to the Federal Transit Authority that the infrastructure, the investment that's about to be put in this area is necessary, deems appropriate. So that's another one of those conversations right there. But the employment and the population is an interesting thing. So we talk about how many employment, how much employees to how many people. Well, the county basically about 50 employees to every 100 people you have. What in this area, we've got about 75 employees to every 100 people you have here. If I go south of the Alafia River, way down in South County, that's only 20 employees to every 100 people. If I go to Waimama, you're dipping all the way down to 13. So you can see there's a concentration of employment that's here. But with that concentration of employment, we don't see benefits that are actually occurring to the people who live there. You can see that that household's at about 30,000, where you can see what's going on in the metro area, in the county, or in the city. So that does take back into some of those issues about equity, making sure that the folks who are in this area have equal access to reach those places of employment. If I've got 25% of those people who don't have access to a car, does that then dip down into issues of ADA and they don't even have access to be able to make it to places of employment along Fowler Avenue because maybe the sidewalk stops? And we don't have a way for them to actually get to certain areas. Or there's other issues that obviously we can capture in a vision on educational attainment and other things, but it's not specifically the place of this plan, again, to account for those issues, but it's always something that we want to make sure that we capture from the community by the education and training. So public engagement. Without any plan, if you don't have public engagement, it's going to fail. So one of the things that we're starting with are community workshops. The consultant just had some conversations with us. December 13th will actually be the first of those. At the University Mall, the Black Hawk Accelerator Theater, that's on the second floor of the mall, basically next to the food court. December 13th, we'll be there in the evening, and we'll seek input from the community through a variety of exercises to look at values for the community and start to have some ideas about trends in urban form. Mobile Engagement Lab through the University of South Florida, they'll be able to speak a little bit more to that in the coming months, but you can think about that as whether they are windshield surveys or to actually bring individuals from the community out and have members of the community have walkthroughs of their community and start having conversations about what works in their community, what doesn't work in the community for those land uses. And then a vision toolkit, again, one of the things that we want to make sure is that what it is that the vision steps forward and is creating for people are something that the people in the community can relate to, hold a conversation about, and tell their friends and neighbors. So that toolkit is something for them to work through. We're already out in the community. These are some signs that we'll be placing out there shortly to basically promote the project and also the meetings in December. A little bit of the timeline. Again, we're in the middle of community values right now. Also, we've got some online surveys that you can go to the project website, which of course will be throughout the entire of it. The mobile events will be in the winter and spring, this winter into spring of next year. Stakeholder focus groups, again, this is the idea to make sure that we capture some of those folks from the mall, some of those folks from Moffett, some of those folks who are large landowners or their civic and community leaders, have some conversations with them. Again, we talked a little bit about these outcomes, the coordination with our transportation partners, the community education, the vision for Fowler Avenue, and again, the policy and strategies for those implementation. This is phase one going into the comprehensive plan. A phase two would actually look at implementation. So if the consultant said, what about an overlay on Fowler Avenue? Phase two would actually look to implement that overlay within the codes for both the city of Tampa and unincorporated Hillsborough County, if that were the direction that the consultant went forward. Again, there is a website that you can go to sign up for notices and become part of this process. We're in our public engagement right now. That first community house we talked about for December 13th. Well, also December the 14th, we'll be doing like a lunch and learn, a virtual component. That information you'll be able to find online at the website. The mobile engagement and community ambassador training will be ongoing in December and also in January. You can contact myself or Alvaro. Again, our contact is available through Plan Hillsborough. This concludes my presentation, and unless there are any questions from the group, I believe I would be turning this right back over to Ms. Russo.
Okay, is there any, thank you, Jay, first of all. Is there any questions on what was presented? Certainly seems comprehensive. When you're talking about adjustments to the comp plan amendment, are you like thinking it would be targeting this area, like language would be specific to this area, or is it language or policy that you think would be affecting all of county policy?
So the scope that the county is working on is specific to just Fowler Avenue. Most certainly, if they put a recommendation out there that they think that what's good for Fowler Avenue is good for other parts of the city or the county, we'll certainly take that under advisement.
Okay.
Question. Is any of the outreach for these items going to be done together in conjunction?
Yeah, that's a great conversation that we've actually been having right now about how we can do just that, syncing up. One of the things that we are looking forward to is the second community workshop for this will actually be working about the same time that we expect DOT to have their workshop.
Yeah, so I mentioned we're going to, once we define our alternatives for the transit corridor, we'll be holding the alternatives public workshop in the second quarter of next year, and that will be a collaborative effort as well.
Okay. And then how will you three or the agencies keep in contact or communicate? Are you having regular meetings, or how are you sharing information with each other?
FUT and HARD, we just set up monthly meetings, and I think we had decided on key milestone meetings with the vision study. This last slide, I just wanted to wrap up and
Okay,
open
great.
it up to questions on any of the studies that you might have. And thank you for your time. and
Okay.
attention.
Yeah, so I'll give one last shout out. I mean, we kind of covered them in pieces. Maybe that, sorry if that wasn't the intent, but I think we, anybody, I'll give a second for anybody online if they have a question. But I mean, for me, my comment would be, I'm glad to see everybody's working together on it. That there's not people working with blinders on and that these things are everybody's aware of crossover, getting involved. So that's.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we can see in the future in this is taking the timelines, because you saw 3 different timelines today. If we can merge those 3 timelines to show the overlap of when there are opportunities for each of us to influence the other, or for that matter, for the public to have 2 bites at the apple, be able to make comment on the vision plan, but also comment on the redevelopment of Fowler itself, on the right of way. I think that's part of why this is important to do that, is so that there is not public burnout, but that we can all do this at the same time and make sure that the public gets to see what each side is doing so that they can have an aha moment as they go, here's what I want the right of way to look like. Oh, but does that actually go with what I think Fowler Avenue's land usage should do? That's that educational bridge that we get to gap. Oh.
Very good. Questions? Okay, I think that does it from our side. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not gonna do it. Should we go? We just don't vote.
We can certainly have a presentation without a vote if you'd like to.
I mean, because this needs to go this month. Right? So it seems like we won't get a chance to vote on it again.
But we can still make comments. if you'd
Right.
like.
Okay, I think we're gonna, at this point, it doesn't look like we're gonna get a quorum. So we're gonna, Roger, if you're ready, we're gonna just jump back and have you present the TIP amendment. We won't be able to make a motion and vote, but we can offer the opportunity for comment that could at least be put in the record. Since I think this is something that goes before the board probably first. Roger?
All right. Yep, that sounds good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okie dokie. And good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, TAC members. I'm Roger Matthew, TPO staff, GIS project manager. We have one amendment here, the TIP amendment for Polk Street Rail Crossing Technology. This amendment was requested by FDOT to add funds to the fiscal year 23, fiscal year 27 TIP. The rail crossing technology is called radio key down. This will allow the train or CSX operator to activate the flashing signals along Polk Street. CSX is also replacing outdated equipment with the new equipment. And this slide here shows the fiscal year 23 with the addition of funds of $119,580. And as part of the newly adopted public participation plan amendment, we posted an issue of the newsletter release on social media. We published a web page and posted signs along Polk Street intersections along the rail corridor. And that is all I have, quick and sweet. And we're recommending, of course, recommending the amendment to the fiscal year 23-27 TIP and recommending approval to the TPO board. And any questions for you guys?
Okay, thanks, Roger. Do we have any questions from the committee? I have one, just because I'm not that familiar with this. I mean, I'm familiar with this rail crossing. I don't know how much rail car traffic it gets, but I don't recall what the current layout is as far as lights or barriers. So is this going to be just an addition of lighting, or is there also going to be like pedestrian stops that come down, or what exactly is the radio key down?
Okay, so the radio key down, when a train approaches a rail crossing intersection, the older equipment will trigger the arms to come down and the flashing lights to signal, come on. So along Polk Street, there are no crossing arms that come down. So when the train moves through that corridor, it has to be at a specific speed. And it will trigger the flashing signals. Apparently, some of the signals are not flashing. And so this new technology will replace those.
Okay, well, at least that makes more sense, because I could not for the life of me remember there being arms that came down. So.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, from a safety standpoint, it certainly seems relevant, but, you know, I don't know what other aspects are involved. So no other questions or comments from the committee. Since we don't have a quorum, we can't officially take formal action. I guess we can just put in comments that there's been no objections to the tip from the committee as part of the comments. Looking at all that, like that's an agreement. So unless anybody online has an issue with that statement, I think we will go forward with that for the record.
And you asked about how many trains might use this. I believe it was something around 2 per week is the frequency on this line, so it's not terribly.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't know. Because I think it doesn't, I don't even know if it goes through, doesn't go to a dead end.
It goes to the Cass Bridge across River at Cass.
It does pass through, okay.
And that's the line that goes all the way down to Port Tampa, at West Shore and Interbay, basically.
Okay, all right, very good. So I think that does it. Thank you, Roger, for your presentation.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, jumping back to the status reports, I think we are up to Lisa with the Tampa School of Transportation and Safety stuff.
Great, thank you. Yay. Okay. Confirming that you're seeing my screen just like before and you can hear me.
We can hear you, Lisa. Yes, sorry.
I was like, oh my God. All right. Okay, today is the status of this project. Stay tuned because next month when you have your joint TAC-CAC meeting, it'll be for action. So today I'm going to tell you how we pulled together lots of data and all of the recommendations that go into this study. So I'm kind of like showing you how we made the sausage, and then you'll see more of the actual specific recommendations for each school in December for action. So just tell you a little bit about it. You guys heard about it as just a little intro earlier this year. We have a TPO study from 2018 that we're building upon. So we ranked every school from most dangerous to least dangerous. This helps us implement our Vision Zero. Certain physical improvements get identified in and around the schools and connecting to them. But this time we learned from previous times, and because there's no magic buckets of engineering solution funding, we have behavior problems, and we have really successful encouragement campaigns in Tampa Bay. We built upon that and have a whole section on that this time. It's very data driven. This is not like where you get the most phone calls from complaining parents kind of project. And this time, instead of just a little bit of a nod to equity, we gave it a lot of significance. So it like 40% of the methodology in ranking the various schools was equal between safety and equity. We built on the surveys that we did from the previous report. So we kind of mimicked and re-blasted the questions so we could do a time over time comparison. And because the questions were designed after the National Safe Routes to School programs. So I'll be giving a few highlights of that. We assembled a stakeholder group, many of the school transportation working group members. If you recall, when we had that, when we first added a school board member to the TPO, we had a group meet for 3 years to dive into these things, and that's when the first study was done. We reunited many of the working group members to provide feedback on this throughout the process. Okay, so when we looked at the schools, of course, we looked at crash data specific to the school-aged children, on school dates and times, the types of crashes, bike ped primarily. And then free and reduced lunch data helped inform our equity data. Of course, we looked at the context. This school study focused on City of Tampa schools. We did re-rank all the schools, and we provide that refresh data to all of our jurisdictions. But Hillsborough County's already been implementing their Safe Routes projects from the last study. This was a request from City of Tampa, so they're focused on that. And City of Tampa has a lot of small residential brick line streets, so they have a different context. So context and roadway characteristics were also important. So the whole methodology is got a little detailed report in and of itself. It's on the school website at planhillsborough.org/school. So this kind of breaks down the types of data that went into that ranking that's kind of hit already. So here's our final list of schools after we looked at all that. Some of the schools from the first study have not had all of their recommendations implemented, so they're still ranking high, but because they have a detailed road safety audit already, they were bypassed. Also, because of the information we received from surveys, elementary schools are a lot bigger bang for the buck. So if we had all things equal, we erred towards picking an elementary school. And so Shaw Elementary near the university area and just south of Fowler Avenue that you just saw the presentations on, along 15th Street. So yes, so that is a very dangerous area. So it's no accident that this rose to the top of our list. And so we definitely considered all the planning efforts going on with Fowler, and you'll see that addressed in our draft study. And so there's a nice synergy and marriage between the recommendations of all the efforts. Blake High School, Orange Grove, Middle Magnet, Just Elementary, Blake and Stewart are actually all adjacent to each other. So we got like a whole little campus synergy thing going on with that one. Blake Elementary and Jefferson High School in the West Shore area. Okay, so when we sent out our survey, we were like, yay! I mean, we know that public outreach is sometimes incredibly hard to get, but those parents actually participate. So we got 6,000 responses, and we broke it down by the types of schools and asked them questions. Fortunately, you still see personal vehicle as the #1 way to get to and from school. But we do have buses up there pretty high, but you can see our walking and biking and carpooling are very low. So there's things to help inform and get that better. So one thing that we would like to get the car lines lower. That is a challenge when you look at these school studies. So we were trying to think, how can we incentivize that? Well, the school district just implemented their Here Comes the Bus app. So excited about this. So there's a bus app, and you can opt into it, and you will get a text alert when the bus is near the bus stop. So you know when it's safe to send your child out there to the bus stop. Same thing on the return home. You can get it by text, app notification, email, whatever. The second wave of this implementation, because this is brand new, looks like next semester, the next wave will go in where there's a RFID chip in the student's ID card. So it's still very protected and encrypted data. You cannot tell exactly where your child is, but you would get an alert when they were on a bus and off a bus. So you would know not only when the bus is getting near the bus stop, but whether the child got on the bus. So that's these are really great things to like help incentivize. I can tell you personally, my son's bus is late to school, so it's very tempting not to put him on the bus. And with this reliable data, it's definitely more comfortable. We looked at the different types of schools, the distance children are traveling to and from those types of schools, in age groups. That helped inform it. So these were the family surveys that I'm referring to, the distances people are from the schools. Vehicle speeding, not a surprise from all of our Vision Zero efforts. Speed management, big issue. It's a big issue in and around schools. The survey confirmed that, but we have some, other things about lighting, poor road conditions, et cetera, also as concerns. We were very curious if there was a post-COVID shift in behaviors that parents or children had and their preferences getting to and from school. So we'd ask a few questions there. A few things went up, a few things went down, but there weren't like significant changes. So it's not like everybody jumped off the bus or got out of carpools or single car occupants. So that was interesting and helped us. Then we asked, strategies to get to and what are parents using? Because we thought, maybe there's some secret thing out there that we can tap into and share with the community. So, Ring doorbells even were being used. There's some apps that are being used, text messages, different things. And so again, sharing these resources across schools and with administration, et cetera, is one of the tools we're having to make things better. So then we surveyed the schools. So we sent all the principals and assistant principals a survey and asked them, like, would you be interested in a school study? What are your strategies for walking and biking? Who has a large population of that? We hear that there's non-designated school drop-off locations. The school district does not recognize those. So very hard to work with making those officially safe and encouraging those. So that was some data we got out of the survey. School circulation, getting on and off property and the car line remains a big thing. Traffic backing up onto the roadways, also still a big thing. So those are things we try to work on. Here's some of the strategies principals shared with us. So we got the little secret list from the parents, and then we asked the principals. So we're cross-sharing this. These lists will be in the report, because as we went around, we found some schools had access to really great barriers and cones for circulation, safety, channelization, and others that did not. And so, getting everybody on one page to know what those resources are, where they are, and who's got a budget for them is one of the things we're going to solve with our education campaign. Good school report gets developed without going out and watching arrival and dismissal during the school year. So we went out there, call these my cone fatalities. I'm like, see, some schools just don't even have functioning cones, and the parents are misbehaving and killing what few cones they have left, and they're not very visible. So that's one thing. I call this one sidewalk jail. It's over near Blake. Getting from Stewart over to Blake, you would have to go actually into the street at certain times of the day. So that seems like a missed opportunity. So, and then misbehaving parents where they're just like, oh, I'm not going to deal with the car line or following processes. I'm just going to park on the sidewalk. So clearly that is a problem. So we have our field analysis in each portion of the report. So each of them has the field review. We took all the individual survey responses for each school, and then we got draft ideas and met and had a little charrette with each principal of the schools. And so we said, oh, here's our professional and the survey informed ideas. What, you work with the school all the time. So we had a lot of really great interaction. You can see here like the little Post-its and marking up the maps right in their offices. So we did those. I'm not going to go into all the recommendations this time around, but then we developed a formal recommendations and have them illustrated for each map. These are, again, going to be posted on the website for your action in December. Orange Grove, same process. Then West Tampa, this one's kind of fun because they've been informally doing what is called a school street. So we know from our Vision Zero efforts about open streets or ciclovias. Well, there's a concept to do that where you close streets in and around schools to use it for safe circulation for non-vehicles. And And this school is doing that. So City of Tampa is going to work with us to make that a formal process and policy. Also, you see the cones. Well, you know, having an official maintenance of traffic plan with the cone package and the barricades and where there are school streets or not school streets, et cetera, is one tool we're going to file with each of the schools after the recommendations get formalized. Here's the observations and the principal feedback, and the principal was very receptive to having a painted, actually a whole corridor, because there's some one-way and crazy driving on the one-ways where some local residents are going the wrong way, and there's some speeding through the school zone because it's got extra pavement. So we're gonna propose to do a Paint Saves Lives project for one of the corridor, for that lane, to make it more obvious where there's special drop-off area. I'll tell you a little more about that fun project. And then Potter, we got the family surveys, the principal recommendations, and then the formal recommendations of like raised crosswalks, four-way stops, additional speed management techniques. Jefferson High School in the West Shore area, we've balanced these recommendations with city projects that are coming to. We did that for each of the schools. Some of them are lucky enough to have some complete street projects proposed in and around them, like Lois. Cypress is getting some attention. We're suggesting a traffic signal because the buses have just a horrific time getting in and out on Cypress each day. So then we had this whole campus of Just Elementary, Stewart Middle Magnet, and then just down and under the underpass here is Blake High School. So this was looked at comprehensively because they all influence each other and some of them get out at different times. This is where a school policy would also help us with all of our circulation issues, because Stewart is a magnet school. We believe with all this redevelopment south of it, it could be a candidate for flipping back to a conventional neighborhood school, because you have probably a lot of children moving into all this residential that's going in, and that would not have this be attracting buses. Magnet schools are like pretty much very bus focused. We had all kinds of bizarre behavior in and around Blake High School, but the principal's like, hey, we'll work with you on getting some of your encouragement and education policies out there. We have a drama department that will help make videos, etc. So yeah, and here we are. Okay, and then the last fun portion of our study is encouraging and educational ideas. We have a list of resources, because there's some really great products that are out there. There's some great groups like Sidewalk Stompers that are doing some very effective walk to school programs and safety ambassador programs. So they were a stakeholder and we're using their ideas and leveraging those. Especially with principal turnover, we're developing this who do you call. This is getting filled out. This is the draft. So when you want to know who do I call for crossing guards, it will be on here. Who do I call for sidewalk repairs? It's on here. Who do I call when the street lights are malfunctioning? It's on here. You know, who do I call if I'm interested in a education campaign? Well, Walk, Bike, Drive Tampa, you know, and stuff. So we're listing all these great resources that we have at our have access to, so that they're like kind of like little flyers and or magnets on their file cabinets in the schools, so that the administration has they feel comfortable about how to get things resolved for their school sites on and off property. So these are a mock-up of our yard signs. We're thinking that these will be great in and along the safe routes that we've, and the recommended routes that we've identified. Also, kind of bringing some special attention to actual school zones, because people are still zooming through the school zones, even though they're signed properly. So bringing some attention to that, and this would get filed with that maintenance of traffic plan, so that the staff to staff and year to year, they'd know where they'd be most visible and most effective. Also then turning some of the safety messages and or those signs. We have a captive audience in the car line, and we have a captive audience traveling through school zones. There's a geofencing campaign that we're working with FDOT and Cutter on, and we would like to have our safety school messages as part of that campaign. Here we see the new logo for West Tampa Elementary, one of our schools, and that's that drop-off lane that I told you they had extra pavement that could use some more delineation. We've had a scout approach us working on an Eagle Scout badge, and they want to adopt the school and help implement that suggestion. So we've gotten them in touch with the principal, so that's a really fun synergy going on there. And then crosswalks to classrooms are some of the low-cost recommendations with the different school sites, and you see that. So like I said, we're going to bring this back for action in December. The whole report is on the website in its draft form now. It's getting revised and updated for the December adoption. So stay tuned for more. That concludes my presentation.
All right. Very good, Lisa. You covered a lot of ground there. Certainly not surprised by some of the schools mentioned. I think it's somewhat ironic that I happened to unknowingly make comments about 15th and then find out Shaw's right there. So that maybe, unfortunately is probably part of the correlation. You don't have to answer this now. I'm curious if that school pulls from only the south side of Fowler. I know there's not many residents north, so hopefully that is the case. But if they do,
it does not. It does pull from the north side, but because Fowler is one of the few roads that are legally defined as hazardous in the state statute, the families to the north are offered a bus. Not all of them use the bus. Some of them are observed walking to school. So we do have suggestions about the improvements in and along Fowler Avenue being implemented and tying into like the CSX rail line crossing got improved, so it actually doesn't slow traffic down. It was kind of like unnatural traffic calming before, so we're proposing raising the school crosswalk where the crossing guard is along there. Then I forgot to mention that last year we adopted the Safe Access to Parks project. Copeland Park was one of the parks that was one of our three pilots. And it is adjacent and has the after school program for Shaw Elementary, also along 15th. So we're hoping, and the city's excited that we have like this whole synergy between, the recommendations for safe access to parks along 15th. We got the Shaw Elementary now, recommendations from here all the way up to Fowler. Then we've got the Fowler recommendations and the high injury network corridor recommendations for 15th north of there and south of there for the city and the county projects. So we're hoping that, in fact, I do know that they submitted all of this for their Safe Streets for All grant. So cross your fingers and toes. We might be able to implement a lot of this and have many projects benefit from it and many fatalities and crashes affected.
okay, that would be great. That would be great. Do we have any other comments from the? Oh, Jay comments.
Hey, Lisa, this is great work as always that you're doing with the schools. One thing I was wondering about, since a lot of this is retrofit within existing schools, does this transfer or translate well into the expansion of schools in South County or private schools that may establish themselves? Basically, can we turn this into the use table? If you build a school, here are some things that you have to do.
That's a whole different set of worms there, but the ranking of the schools was for all existing schools. So any South County existing schools, you would have the data to support where it's at, so you could go work on those that are most dangerous first. School siting, we've been working with Cutter and LTAP on some webinars to get more informed about how to more appropriately site and design the schools. In fact, Jefferson is a good example because they have sidewalks all around the school and they have sidewalks on the school near the front door, but they don't have sidewalks getting you from the perimeter sidewalk to the front door. So in fact, they have very generous wide curve radii on their vehicular use areas. So like you can just fly out of there in a vehicle and there's like, it's all fenced. So you have to walk in the vehicle use area just to get into the school. And we're like, what? This is crazy. So yes, the design of school and recommending to design them better and considering all the modes and actually prioritizing the vulnerable modes is also a recommendation of the study. But it doesn't address future schools per se. We do sort and deal with charter schools because they are technically a public school, but they are regulated completely different. So they are not selected as one of our detailed analysis schools.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Any other comment? I think that's a great comment. Question for today. Anyone else? I know for me, you said the magic word when you said car line, because and I've had a couple of kids and they're mostly all grown up now, and I've gone through all the different schools and it was the same problem at every school. And,
yes.
You know, I'm glad to see there's some techniques, but I have a feeling it's mainly up to the principal to figure it out. But it's unfortunate, and I don't have a recommended solution. I just hate to see it, you know, and some people insist on showing up an hour and a half before their kid even gets out just because they want to be at the front of the line. But I don't know how to solve that. But I do think the staggered exits somehow of the different modes is a good suggestion. And from, you know, again, because of where I work on the environmental side, it's horrible because everybody's sitting there idling, and they're idling right while the kids are kind of walking out. So you're wasting gas and everything else. So anything to streamline that would be encouraged.
Okay, well, yes, this is my other, you could help us because I would like some of the little signs lining the car line, and I would like it to say something like, if you, I just don't have it all figured out and I'm not a marketing person. So, but it's like, oh, did you know if you arrived like 10 minutes later, you would have gotten out 5 minutes, you know, like 15 minutes faster, because that is no kidding the truth. I would like that communicated. Also, I think you might be able to tug at some of the hearts of the backseat driver, the kids in the backseat, they're sitting there waiting to pick up sister and brother, because you could say, oh, in the time that you've been sitting here idling, you know, X amount of trees or X amount of carbon was emitted into, you know, and stuff. And so, because it's just crazy, the car lines. I've been trapped in them too and stuff. And
it's not easy, but that's a good thing that I think, you know, maybe there's for new schools, that's an idea where maybe, you know, I don't know if it's multiple lanes or something to expedite, you know, the means.
yes,
it's not an easy answer. It's not an easy
right.
answer.
Now, we do have those things when it's appropriate, which we did with some of the suburban model schools. We looked at flipping the car line with the bus line. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes wrapping it longer. But again, that's just like solving really long car lines. My, you know, preferred method is to just get them out of the car and to school in a more helpful way and not idling kind of way. So if you can make the bus less painful with like that bus app and incentivizing busing. I know that my kids' school, the kids got in trouble for cutting in the lunch line because the lunch line's so long, you can barely get your lunch in time to eat your lunch. So definitely, if bus riders got to cut the line on purpose, then that might be an incentive to ride the bus instead of, you know, sitting in mom's car and stuff, because then they get to enjoy lunch in a more leisurely way. We're trying to find encouragement and incentives for all the modes. It's
That's not a good idea.
challenging.
Incentives go a long way, because I can remember being in high school and having some incentives, and they worked more than they did. So,
Well, we did fix some disincentives. I discovered schools that had, if you were caught walking or biking to school without the very litigious written form that your parent had to sign and submit and file with the school, you got detention the first time and suspension the second time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So with our last study, we got that policy nipped in the bud. Also, some schools that, like including the Rampello downtown school, made it illegal for parents to choose to let their children walk to school. You had to walk them onto the property, even when they were 14 and 8th graders. And I'm like, you know, or run the risk of losing your spot at the school. And I was like, that's crazy policy. So we got all of that changed with the last go round. So yes, they're supposed to incentivize walkers and bikers first to get off property, and then the car line people, so, and buses before the car line.
all right, very good.
All right, I could obviously talk forever, but I shouldn't, so I will stop.
I think all of our comments have been addressed, and I appreciate your passion for the project, and we look forward to seeing how it continues to evolve. So thanks, Lisa.
Okay, we'll see you December 7th. Bye.
Okay, thanks. All right, last scheduled item is the Hillsborough County Bicycle Network Evaluation, and Wade is going to lead the presentation.
Good afternoon, TAC. This is the Hillsborough County Bicycle Network evaluation plan. We looked at some high priority corridors for potential improvements in this case. So the first thing we did is we looked at the risk on each of these corridors, and you can see that that included the crash history, the posted speed limits, the average daily traffic, the total number of lanes, and the presence or lack of lighting. We then looked at the exposure score, and again, this is related to cyclists, but activity generators, the residential density on each corridor, the proximity to bus stops, and equity and social justice, which means that it is within or directly adjacent to an underserved community. And then we produced a network score, whether there is an existing bicycle facility along the segment, whether there is an existing sidewalk, even though it's not necessarily encouraged for cyclists to use sidewalks, although there is a lot of usage. The connectivity and whether that segment's distance from an existing or planned bicycle facility, and the context classification of the road segment. Then we combined these three scores into a segment prioritization score. All of the four corridors that I'm going to go over fell into the very high prioritization score category, which, because there are four scores, contains about 25% of programs. So the four high priority corridor opportunities, and just to, excuse me, go back 1 second, I should add that the four that we chose, there were some that scored higher, but that already have design or other projects underway. So in an effort not to reinvent the wheel on that or to interfere with an existing project, we skipped those and went on to the next ones on the list. So those came out to West Waters Avenue from Sheldon to the Veterans. The bicycle level of service out there right now is an E on the western end of that corridor and a D on the eastern end, where there are bike lanes approaching the Veterans. Causeway Boulevard, which has a level of service E. Shell Point Road, a level of service F, and that's from US 41 to 24th Street. And then Balm Riverview Road, which also has an E level of service, bicycle level of service. So looking at the existing conditions on West Waters Avenue, on the westernmost portion of it from Sheldon to Pinehurst, there are shared lane markings of 6 lanes throughout the corridor. And then as you go from Pinehurst to the Veterans Expressway, there are existing conventional bike lanes on that segment. This is just a commentary on the existing conditions. It is 35 miles per hour on the western end, 45 on the eastern end. And again, no mid-block crossings, numerous commercial driveways, and 2 park bus routes on this segment. So the potential improvements, we did try to use the county's tiered levels of interventions. Those, the tier 1, excuse me, are the lowest cost and quickest installation, while tier 3 is the highest cost, I believe, if I'm reading that correctly. So a number of proposed or potential improvements that we will then go back and analyze and make sure that these would line up with the corridor. So some of those potential improvements just shown on the segments here, showing bike lanes potentially throughout the corridor, trying to extend those to Sheldon, intersection treatments such as bike boxes, signage, green paint marking at conflict points, and then mid-block crossing treatments at the locations that those are proposed, which are Northbridge Boulevard and 2 other locations on that segments. And showing these existing crosswalks parallel to marking the existing crosswalks and some other paint interventions, as well as some additional connectivity proposed for connecting sidewalks. Just continuing on with that corridor, you can again see the proposed improvements. Again, a mid-block crossing at Rustic Boulevard and several intersection treatments, as well as crosswalk and paint treatments. Moving on to Causeway, again, the existing conditions, there are no sidewalks or bike facilities as you cross I-75. And there is about a mile between crossings between Providence Road and Brandon Parkway and the Brandon Parkway Trail there, which is surprisingly highly used. Again, I spoke about the tier 1 through tier 3 improvements, and then we even have a couple of adjacent and supplemental projects. There are some proposals for on Falkenberg, Providence, and Gornto Lakes Road, converting bike lanes to buffer protected bike lanes, and identifying additional speed management and traffic calming treatments throughout the corridor to facilitate a target speed of 35 miles per hour on that. But some of the tier 2 improvements that I want to focus on here are new mid-block crossings, reconstructed sidewalks, a shared use path on the I-75 overpass with Jersey barrier separations in that location, and bicycle improvements such as a 2-stage left turn box, green pavement markings, and to install a counter on the Brandon Parkway Trail as it terminates there. Again, just some of those improvements shown on the map here. You can see the proposed shared use path crossing I-75 on Causeway Boulevard as one of the main ones. Continuing along, again, you can see how that connectivity goes over to Brandon Parkway Trail and Providence Road, where there are existing bicycle facilities that connect into this corridor. Moving on to Shell Point Road, US 41 to 24th Street existing. There are sidewalk facilities along most of it, but it jumps to the north and south side. There is also a vision for a shared use path on a portion of this in the Greenways and Trails plan. One of the tier 3 improvements shown here is continuing the 10 to 12 foot shared use path along the north side of East Shell Point Road to US 41. That is where certain segments of shared use path exist today. Just showing that on here, you can see the sidewalk gaps filled in on the south side and a proposal for a shared use path along the north side of Shell Point Road. And you can, moving over to 24th Street, again, the same treatments proposed, as well as mid-block or new or enhanced crossings. And I should point out that that HCC South Shore campus is where the South Coast Greenway connects to Shell Point Road. So making that connection with the shared use path would be a goal of this project. Moving on to Balm Riverview Road from Boyette to McMullen. These are the existing conditions. You can see there are great sidewalk facilities, but no bicycle facilities at this location. I also just do want to note Riverview High School here, which is obviously an important generator. So with, again, going back to the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 improvements, we have proposals for high visibility pedestrian crossing markings, extending the school zone to include 200 feet from school grounds and all new crossings at the school locations, repairing the sidewalks and realigning Tucker Road to meet Balm Riverview at a 90-degree approach, which will reduce the crossing distance among other site improvements at that location. We also have some proposals for mid-block crossings, bicycle improvements at the intersections, including bike boxes, green conflict paint, and wayfinding signage, and then connections to the existing bike lanes on Boyette and McMullen and Sims Road. One of the things about the plantings here, one of the proposals about that is it is a traffic calming thing. In addition to narrowing lanes, planting vertical trees alongside roadways provides a visual cue for people to slow down because you can naturally feel that sort of closed-in nature of it, and it does tend to slow traffic down. Some of the tier 3 improvements, converting sidewalks to a shared use path on the east side adjacent to the school, as well as lighting all intersections and crossings. So again, looking at the map, you can see that beige line is the proposed shared use path along the Riverview High School side of this. I believe north is actually to your left here, unlike the other ones. So that would be on the east side of the roadway. Continuing that treatment all the way down to the connections at McMullen Road, and then proposing bike lanes as you get past McMullen Road. So, the next steps, again, we do have the safety retrofit toolbox here, but we are going to evaluate the potential improvements, the bike facilities enhancement, or whether it's a complete retrofit, looking at each of those intersections and crossings, and we will probably be coming back in February for action on this item. So I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, very good. Thank you, Wade. Do we have any comments or questions from the committee?
It was very thorough, good stuff.
I know I've said it before, and I mean, I like the idea of the plantings from the environmental side. I mean, unfortunately, there's a maintenance aspect to having trees, and but the positive aspects from helping to deal with the emissions, and then even maybe possibly shade for cyclists or pedestrians, in the area is a nice thing. So maybe not something that would be for an entire length of a project, but maybe in a focal area, because I do think amateurishly that it does create kind of a focal area that this is my road in this area here, and it's separate from those outside facilities for the bicycles. So I think there is some merit to that.
Yeah, it does cost more public dollars, but also there's a return on those dollars because there are studies that show adjacent property that has plantings in the right of way actually has a higher return value. So
yeah, I think it's I mean, I would encourage it, but I do know that there's limits in the right of way and how much space it takes and all that stuff. But
and utilities.
Yeah, utilities and keeping pruning them.
Wait at the side. Y'all don't have a larger map that shows all of that tier 1, 2, and 3 and how it connects into the existing system.
No, we don't have an overall map at this time, but that's a good idea.
Helps, I guess, to visualize why certain improvements would be made at certain tractors because you're making those connections to the larger networks.
On the one hand, we do show some of those existing connections, and I'll just show at Boyette Road, we have the bike lanes and sidewalks shown, but we don't show that those continue further and give you an overall picture of that. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
I think, did you make a comment at the Brandon Parkway that maybe you were surprised at how much use it was getting?
Yes, I believe you all did some of the counts, possibly, Sarah.
When we did the big data trail survey we brought to you last month, we've been doing some analysis of it. One of the ones that has stood out to us in particular has been Brandon Parkway. We're still finalizing some things, and we're identifying some maybe follow-up steps to confirm it because we don't have actual counts. Because there is some kind of things that the vendor does on their end, so it's not like an exact count. But based on that algorithms and what we're seeing, it's a very highly used app.
I think that's a testament to how it's designed. I mean, when you do all these studies and, I hear about, I don't think I'm integrated into all this the way you guys are, but I've used that, I've driven that path and I've seen it in use. And I think the combination of the size, where you have ample space and, there's a lot of growth and separation. And it's just the nature that was put there. It's more inviting. And it's all from the, the really heavy lumsden and so forth. You feel a little bit of, I think, just generally feel a little bit safer too. And when you add all this together, I think that's a function of design that, went all the way back to when, before they put it in. That's just my opinion, but I don't know if you like the feedback or not.
No, it's helpful, and that's what we're trying to do as part of that trail analysis. Kind of the next steps is try to figure out which ones are surprising to us. Why are they surprising? What can we learn from it? It's helpful.
I don't do much biking, but I can tell you if I was going down there, I would divert out of my way a certain distance to use that. Just knowing what I've seen from driving, I would be a definitely preferred route for me. And that's just one person's driving the area. I happen to live near there. So something to look at. But anyway, yeah, great overview. We look forward to hearing future updates. Okay, that concludes all the scheduled items. Do we have any old or new business? Okay, hearing none. It was briefly mentioned. Everybody should be on note. Next month is December, and traditionally we combine our meeting with the Citizen Action Committee. So that is the case. So the meeting will not be on a Monday, it'll be on a Wednesday. Are they still doing that?
I believe that is much critical. We won't note that.
Okay. I mean, typically it starts at 12. I know last year we were going to actually start a little bit. And then there's lunch at 12, and it started at 1, and we were going to start it a little bit before 1 because of there was enough of a crowd there. So recommend anybody that can come early, and it's a good chance to meet with the citizens group, and they sometimes have questions. It's always a good overlap for us to get together. Unfortunately, I don't think I will be here, so apologize for that. I will be out of town, I think. But anyway, you're in good hands with Mike. Right, I was here.
So by default, Mike just learned he's chairing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Well,
I was going to be here until he just left. He said he should.
Merry Christmas, month.
Should be on board. I think that covers it. Hearing nothing else, I think we are officially closing the meeting.